This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Avoid the Maze. The maze is our life. And you know what? We can't get out of it. We're going to keep going through it right from the moment we're born until the day we go 6 feet under, or however we are going to be disposed of at the end of our life. Um, my guest today is Malisa Hepner, and I met Malisa on podmatch.com. And Melissa, when I read your bio, it just resonates because we're going through a time in our life right now where people are either really nice and they care and they're empathetic, or we have the extreme opposite that they're never wrong. It's their way or the highway. And sadly, we are smart enough that we should know that we are all different, that we don't have to be programmed like someone else. So when I read your bio, you said you have an extensive history of childhood trauma. So take us on a journey. Let us know what you went through and how you're helping people today.
All right. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So I had two parents that were addicts, and they both pretty much loved anything they could get their hands on. So it was a lot of extensive use for both of them. And I have two siblings that we both like, that all three of us share the same mom and dad. I have half siblings too, and we have our relationship, but like for the context of this conversation, I just refer to my two brothers because we're the ones who kind of were raised in the household together. But we did a lot of back and forth between our mom and our grandparents uh, from the time I was like 2 months old, like on. Yeah, I mean, this stuff started really early. There's a lot of history there. So we went back and forth. And then when I was in sixth grade, 12 years old, my grandpa divorced my grandma. And up until then, he was not really a factor in our lives. We knew he wasn't a nice person. Like, she did a lot of preparing us for his responses to things. And my grandma really tried her very best to protect us from him because my mom didn't turn out the way she did for no reason, right?
Right.
So my grandpa was very just not a good human. Like I would call him soulless, to be honest. Like he in a more spiritual sense, I would say he really lost all contact and connection with his soul. He was just very in his humanness, and he's gone now. Thank goodness. So we really just, there were instances where he would cause harm to us, but it was pretty minimal because she did a really good job of protecting us from that. But he left, and it a couple of years before that is when the back and forth between my mom and my grandparents really stopped. She put us in a particularly bad situation with a guy she had us living with, and that was kind of the last straw for all of us, including her. She said, I don't want to keep doing this to my kids. Thank you, mother. So that happened. We were all actually much happier after my grandpa was gone. We could breathe in our own house. Um, I think my grandma was even happier, but I mean I don't really know because she was not someone I would have ever described as happy. She really lived in her victimhood. That's not the way she would have described herself, I'm sure, but she really did. And then my dad died of an overdose when I was 15, and then my mom died when I was 22. And really, that was the first child loss that my grandma experienced, and everything after that was her trying to survive losing a child. But I mean, she didn't go into that with any sort of healthy coping skills. This is a woman who my entire life had no friendships except for with us and like her own children. She was the mother of five. And she was just hypercritical of herself and everyone around her. And she would, I remember her making like a really big deal of people trying to extend friendship to her even. It was really bizarre, but like I told you, I mean, she was absolutely a narcissist. So none of the behavior surprises me now, but having been programmed with all of that, I found myself in this profound darkness where I felt at my core fundamentally unlovable. And I was finally able to identify that that's where I was sitting, was like, I'm not worthy of love and belonging. I had so much shame over what amounted to not being perfect, basically. I was really holding myself to a cross of perfection. And I just hit a wall of burnout in every area of my life and just didn't want to be here anymore. And as I started to move pieces to heal and feel better, I started to uncover some of those narratives. And now what I do is I have a podcast called Emotionally Unavailable. I, prior to that, had written my own story called Owning My Crazy. And I've written some children's books. I'm a therapist. And at this juncture, I'm really just trying to show the world how to quiet the noise and connect to self and embody the light, because healing is not as hard as we make it, but you do have to have the right tools, you know?
And you have to want to make a change. You
Mm-hmm.
have to
Absolutely.
you have to come to that point where you say, this is not working for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I may not know how to change it myself, but I know what not to do. And we
Oh,
all know
sure.
what that is. We may
Right.
find it hard to make those changes. Um, I share that for the first 55 years of my life, I did for everybody because that's what I thought was going to make me happy. So
Mm-hmm.
make your husband happy, make your parents happy, make your kids happy, your friends. And all of a sudden, I was sitting at work one day and I started crying. I was not happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of my managers walked in and she said, "What's going on? Did you get some bad news?" And I looked at her and I said, "Yeah." She said, "What?" I said, "I just realized I'm not happy."
Wow.
She looked at me like I was this crazy person. And she said,
Mm-hmm.
"You got a job to do. Go and stay at
Wow.
home,
That was her
wash your face." Yeah.
response.
And it was downhill from that point forward. But I knew
Yeah.
what it was. I loved what I was doing, but the culture was killing me. And
Mm-hmm.
finally admitted that. I said, so I have a choice. I can either go to work and pretend like I like the culture, or I have to get out of here. And that's hard. That's
It
hard.
is hard. It's scary.
Yes. And for you, the family that you knew was all in this craziness, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But you saw on the outside somewhere that that wasn't normal.
Yeah.
So,
That's a great way to put that.
was there a catalyst that finally said to you, Melissa, you got to do this because if you don't, you're always going to be where you are now? What made the change for you?
It was almost a slow burn for years. Like, because around 2016, I finally got my hands on a little bit of information that gave me some light. And I understood that what I was experiencing was reliving my trauma, dealing with the trauma that I experienced. And I didn't have a lot of information about it, but I had enough to understand that I wasn't just a mean person in my reactivity, that I had stuff I needed to deal with. And it felt powerful to have any sort of information that was going to allow me to make some changes. And even with the minimal information that I had at that time, I did start to make some changes. Unfortunately, like I was able to do boundaries at that time, and I was able to do really release myself from people pleasing as much as possible without the stuff that I could see easily.
Yep.
I dealt with that. The problem was all the stuff that I couldn't see. The fact that I lived in my victimhood and didn't even realize it drives me insane still. I have to self-soothe every time I think about it because I was absolutely a victim to my world. Like I was like, everything's happening to me, and it was mostly subconscious. Those were not really thoughts that I had consciously, but that's what was driving me and all of my emotions and behavior. I honestly, the catalyst for change truly was wanting so badly to die. I did not want to be alive anymore. I felt zero hope in my ability to change. I felt zero hope that I was ever going to be happy. You know that moment where you're
Sure.
just like, I'm not happy. It's heartbreaking and it's gut-wrenching because for me, I'd been trying this thing for a really long time. I mean, I was 44. Well, I was 40, actually, I was like 43, but I that's a long time to feel so powerless to your circumstances. And I just hit a wall. And really what I was telling myself was that my kids were better off without me because I didn't feel like I was good enough or I felt like the bad was starting to outweigh the good or something. And really I just wasn't perfect and I didn't know how to handle that. But deciding to not die, I had to be like, well, okay, well, I mean, if I'm not going to die, I got to do something. And so I knew for one that my job was making me miserable. And again, it was the culture. I think, unfortunately, because I was in an educational role as a school counselor, but I think, unfortunately, that whole system is designed to work off people pleasers, and people pleasers are really unhealthy.
Right.
And I came in with boundaries, and the people pleasers didn't like that. And also, it's a women dominated field, and unhealed women are not a good time. So that's the thing. I mean, I'm just going to be really real about that. We can create very toxic environments with our unhealedness. So that's what I was experiencing every minute of every day at work, just nonstop drama, hurtful things, and just an environment of an energy that just zapped you the second you walked in the door. I was coming home and ready for bed at 4 p.m. I mean, that was not a life, and I did that for years. I did know that. I knew I needed to leave my job, and I also was feeling really ready to like pursue my dreams. Like at this point, I'm like, well, if we're not going to die, but we wanted to so bad, might as well just go for all the things that have been so scary to us. So I did. I quit my job. I started a podcast. I went into private practice therapy. Like I was just literally alongside my own healing, was just living in my own power and like, hey, we'll figure this out, you know?
And you just gave our audience the answer. It's within us. We have to bring it out. And it is scary leaving your job. When I left my job, first of all, I was afraid to tell my husband that I wanted to leave.
Mm,
I was the major breadwinner, and he looked at it as a great job. He saw that I was putting all this effort into it and all the things that I was doing. And so when I came to him and I said, I can't go back there one more day, I was expecting him to say, whoa, how are we going to pay the mortgage? How are we going to? And he didn't. He said, are you sure? I want you to think about it because once you walk, there's no going back.
mm-hmm.
And I knew it was like, no. I said, I'm depressed. I said, I like you, but I don't love you right now. I
Yes.
and I went through all these things. And as I was saying them, I thought, wow, things are getting clear now. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and he said to me, then what do you want to do? And the first thing I said was, well, I think I want to blog and podcast. And this was 13 years ago. And he looked at me and he goes, who listens to podcasts? And I said, all it takes is one person. But if I'm sharing my story and I'm hearing somebody else's story, he said, no, no, I don't want you to hear other people's stories because I know you. You're such a giver. You're going to take on all their. And I said, I promise you I won't. And the interesting part is with my clients, I don't. at the end of that hour, I can walk away. I can empathize with them, but I don't carry it. When I'm coaching my son, or right now, even helping my husband along, I carry it. And those are the things that I have to learn because there are tools for all of us.
Yeah.
So when you walked away from a job, now you have your kids.
Hmm.
How did you think you were going to put food on the table? Or did you even think?
Um, well, because I worked in education, I knew I had a little bit of a leeway because I was in, like in Oklahoma, we'll get paid through the summer till August. So I
Okay.
knew I had a little bit of wiggle room. I'm married too, so thankfully he was really supportive. He had been encouraging me to like follow my dreams, follow my dreams. But he's also self-employed and I helped him through that process. So he was like, "It's your turn, honey." Not to say that there has not been a lot of pressure because there has. I kind of the way we had always he's my second husband. And so the way we had always done things was very separate finances. And so, still, the struggle for me is like I have to rely on him for help. It's not even the relying on him for help that's like the worst for me, it's the asking for the help. So, I'm still struggling through that. But I'm just glad to like recognize it as a weakness in the thing that I'm working on, and it just is what it is. But I'm only saying that so that people understand, like what I could afford before is vastly different than what I can afford
Exactly.
now, and I am still paying for a very expensive student loan and an expensive car. So those are stresses every month, every month. I did pay my car payment on time this month though, so I'm celebrating that really big. Like on the day it was due, I paid it, and I was like, hey, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yep.
And you know what? Here's the deal. There's been plenty of stressful times, but there was never actually a moment where none like that I didn't have all of my needs met. I had to learn how to get very centered and present in each moment and understand like not yesterday, not tomorrow, right here, right now. I'm fine and I have to lean into that. Also, even on the worst day now, it is 1,000 times better than my best day then. 1,000 and infinitely better than my best day in the darkness. So, I mean, yes, there's so much trial and tribulation that comes along with entrepreneurship because, I mean, if I'm being 1,000% honest, even the one-on-one recurring therapy, that's not where I'm trying to go. Like, I'm actually, my clients are doing so well that they're like, I'm not, they leave therapy and then I'm not inviting, like, I've closed the door to new clients for right now because I'm really trying to push for one-on-one one-time clients, but also trying to figure out exactly what I want it like cuz like do I want to invest more in trying to monetize my podcast? Cuz when I think about it, my podcast really is like, I love it. But it's this whole journey of like figuring stuff out and you get to, that's the thing. But I don't know. I guess I never super because I was like, well, the worst case scenario is driving for Uber. Like we're in a different time now where you literally can do so much to make money that I was like, I'll just do that.
Well, and you brought up a very good point because I went through the same thing too. It was like my lifestyle was one way when we were both working and bringing in that paycheck. And
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden it was different. Um, and at first, it wasn't disturbing to me because I was home working from home. I was doing what I loved doing. And my husband was out. And he would come home and he'd say, let's go out to dinner tonight. And I'd look at him and go, well, I already have dinner started and we shouldn't be spending the money. And when I would say that, there would be that pain that he would feel. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I let you do this, but now you're taking something else away from me. And it took a while.
Right.
We had to finally come to grips with, okay, we can still do some of those things, but it's not like me coming home from work at 7 o'clock, tired, and you say to me, I'm going to meet you at the corner restaurant on your way home from work. Never.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you listening, you have to make the decisions what you want to do. But I'm so glad that I'm talking to Melissa today because, Melissa, there are many people like you and I who have made these changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it all the time in social media that they're turning clients away because they're so busy. They're having retreats and they're making six figures. I want people to understand that those people are few and far between. And typically, I think most of them had either somebody who invested in them or had some money to be able to get there because
Agree.
you can't podcast and blog and make six figures unless you are recognized by millions of people. And there are millions of
Right.
podcasts out there. So we all know that.
Right.
But I believe your podcast is helping you as much as it's helping those who are listening.
At least as much. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, because it gave me a voice finally. I didn't even realize that I had chosen writing all of those years because it gave me an ability to perfectly craft what I wanted to say without fear because I could rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it and make sure it was exactly what I wanted to say. I was very afraid of the messiness of speaking. And I didn't even know that. And so now I find myself in these conversations saying stuff that I used to be very afraid to let people know about me. And it's very healing to finally get to just stand in my own authority. I was never allowed that, but also generationally, we weren't allowed that. Gen X, boomers, I mean, it was for real hard I mean, if you just even think about how this nation has evolved from industrial to where we are now. I mean, of course, the family system was impacted by that, and nobody knew about feelings. But then you get to 44 years old and never told how to experience a feeling instead of overthinking and overanalyzing and intellectualizing every experience I've ever had. And that was the key right there, was to just figure out how to feel and get in touch with myself. I mean, there was just all these years of just like thinking, and and people are like, "Oh, you're so self-aware." Okay, over analyzing yourself doesn't make you self-aware. It
Right.
doesn't, because there was plenty of blind spots that I had. I mean, lots, embarrassingly. But, yeah, I think we're all just kind of trying to do our best here. And thank you for saying that, because about the six-figure folks on Instagram, there are times it is very discouraging, but that is why I've committed to the level of authenticity to tell people I pay my car payment late almost every month. It is tough. I think I might be late on my student loan right now because they're due around the same time. So I was kind of choosing the student loan first. And
Yep.
then now that the student loan people have made me so mad, and I figure it won't affect my credit forever to be late on it. I've been choosing my car first because they can repo that. But I just try to be very honest about it because
Absolutely.
I believe I'm going to hit the level of success that I'm striving so hard for one day. And I want people to see it takes some heartache along the way to get there. It really does. And, six figures is in my future, but right now it is not in this reality. So,
Well,
you
and
know,
we all look at success differently. And I have I'm going to use the word friend loosely. Um, Somebody that I've worked with in the past who she's been through a lot. Okay. I wouldn't want to have been through what she's gone through. But at the same time, she's had a financial pot that has helped her through all those times. I've never had that. So
right.
I sound more like you that, hey, I got to struggle, I got to juggle. And she's constantly saying to me that I could be more successful. And I keep saying to her, I'm at the success I want to be. And I'll
Yeah.
give my listeners a real answer here. About 3 years ago, I was determined I was going to do 4 to 5 podcasts a day. And I was. And
Wow.
I don't edit them. So as soon as they're done, I put them up, I post them, and then I was going on to another one. And I couldn't understand why, as much as every time I would log on with a guest, I was great. I was happy. But as soon as it ended and I had to do all that other work to get it
Mm-hmm.
out there, I wasn't happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt myself on this teeter totter all day long. And luckily, um, the CEO of Podmatch picked up on the fact that I have just been working like a dog. And he wrote me and he said, is there a reason why you do as many podcasts as you do? Now, I also produce for other people, so those were included in there. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, if I'm going to be successful, and I got a little crazy on the phone thinking he was putting me down. He goes, Erin, are you doing it for other people? Or are you doing it for you? And as soon as he said that, it was like, oh, I'm trying to prove to this so-called friend how successful I am because look at everything that I'm doing. And so I had been booked a year and a half in advance.
Wow.
And I'd look at my calendar and I was going crazy. And so
Yeah.
starting middle of last year, I started backing off, even putting out a notice. I'm not taking any guests right now.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm at the point I can do 2 a day if I want to do 2 a day.
Right.
That's the difference. And so I don't care what the business is, whether you're podcasting, whether you have a cookie business, whether you're selling, cars in a dealership, whatever it is, you
Mm-hmm.
have to find what that balance is for you. What is your success?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't remember who it was. I think this was someone on my podcast that said this, but they were saying yes, we can all reach this financial level of success, but it may not be right for everyone. Like if you're really trying to make like 1 million or more a year, you may not enjoy what that entails. And
No,
I know for sure, unless I were to make that real easily from like social media or something, oh, I hate little tasks.
yeah.
I do not enjoy well, first of all, I don't even enjoy making social media posts unless it's about my podcast, so that sucks. But, like, yeah, I'm not going to enjoy all those little meaningless little things that you have to do. You're exactly right. And I'm trying to learn how to even, like, be a better container for having a busy schedule because after about 3 items on a list for a day, I'm starting to feel a little overwhelmed. So I'm working on that so that I can expand a little bit and be able to handle just more. I mean, not because anything I'm doing is particularly stressful, but I can get kind of overwhelmed. But at the same time, I have an almost 11-year-old. It's summer and I'm working from home. And where do you think she is? At home, asking me for stuff nonstop. That's the part that starts to get a little like resentful, like with my husband being out and working and me being home is like, I'm attending to all of the household needs too.
Right.
This summer, because last summer was my first one. So this summer's different. Like, my house looks like not good. Last summer I was like, he's coming home to a spotless house with dinner on the stove, whatever. This year I'm like, what you got for me, honey? Are you gonna feed me today, or are we just gonna eat some chips? What are we doing? What's the baby getting? Like, like any of these grown-up children of mine gonna contribute? What are we doing? So it just, it really again goes back to what lights you up.
You are so right. And that's why I think individuals have to understand you can make the changes, but number one, do it in baby steps because if you take
Mm-hmm.
that giant step, and like I was trying to do, and I wasn't doing it for me, I was doing it for everybody who I thought was watching me, who was judging me, saying, well, if Karen is doing this, oh, she's only produced one this week. I mean, last week, I produced
Mm-hmm.
one show because I just didn't have the energy in me to do anything else.
Yeah.
And that's when I want people to understand that whether you are working a full time job out of the house, businesses have to understand too. that we all need that mental health day breakdown. And that means,
Absolutely.
like you said, I may not be able to do more than 3 tasks today. If that's all I can do today, but I do them right and efficiently,
Mm-hmm.
that should be a success.
That, and it really doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're working for someone else or yourself, there will always, if you allow, be somebody who's talking about you or to you about how you're not doing it the way you should be doing it. And part of healing is learning that nobody says things like that unless they are actually disliking something about themselves. Like, I wrote this book called Bloom. It has a subtitle. I don't remember what it was because I wrote that during a weird time in my life. But um that I made a very specific point to say nobody doing better than you is going to take their time to talk down to you, about you. I've had very loving, amazing people talk to me and say, "Can I offer a suggestion?" Like, that's different than even my own son, who's 22 now, but, was 21 at the time that I started all this, was very like, that's not work, because he was frustrated because I couldn't like show up for him because I was working. And he's like,
Right.
that's not work. And I'm like, you don't have to define it as work for yourself, but for me it is. This is my life and I will spend my time how I want to. And I believe there will be a way to earn money from doing these things. I don't know how yet, and I'm okay with that.
Well, and I think what you're talking about, especially when it comes to our kids, we have this picture in our head of what a good mother is,
Mm-hmm.
whether we had a good mother or not. I had a fantastic mother, but my mother also, and I didn't realize it till I was grown up, um, she was a little bit sarcastic about things. It'd be like, I had my favorite cousin, Gloria, was tiny and petite. I loved her, loved all of her friends. And my mother would make comments to me, well, if you were tiny and petite like Gloria, and it'd be like, but I'm never going to be. Even at 11 years old, I think I was her height, but
Right.
and she was a teenager. So, but I took it as compliments as I was growing up because she was my favorite cousin. Yes, if I was only like her. And I remember when I got married the first time, and after I had my first son, we thought my son was quite ill. And so he was rushed to Children's Hospital. And my cousin Gloria called me and she talked to me in this soft, wonderful voice. And I realized talking to her, I'm never going to be like her, but I love who she is because
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a soft voice. I'm very direct. And it took me years to say to my mother, I'm sorry for you. I'm not like her. And she goes, oh no, you didn't have to be like her. And I said, but you said that all these years. And she goes, it was just something I said. So sometimes we can heal by talking to people because,
Uh-huh.
you know, our parents, they brought us up the best way that they knew how, and they had their demons as well. So
Absolutely.
I'm hoping that your sons understand that, hey, mom is in a healing phase. And as she's healing, you're going to heal along with her, which is a big step.
Yeah, I think they noticed like the energy in the house changed, but it did get to a place like I have only just recently even started like mentioning my podcast around them again because it was just like, yeah, this is just not like a connection point for us. And I don't need you to understand what I'm doing, but I also don't need your mouth either.
Right.
So it just got to where I just didn't mention it to them. Like they don't know if I'm in here on a client call or a recording, except for like they do know if I'm recording for someone else's show because I'm like, this is not for my show. Y'all cannot be making all that noise, okay? So they do know that. But like, they don't know how I spend my time or how much money I make or any of that stuff. So I just learned like at this juncture, I think it just made him feel he had just moved back home at the time because he decided to go back to school. And I think if I were to guess, um it was bringing up shame in him because he had just left a job to be able to go to school full time. And you know what I mean? And so he was like, I kind of need you and you're not necessary, So, I mean, I get it and that's fine. I just learned like it's important to me though that if I'm going to share these things that are so much a part of who I am now with someone that I need to feel safe to do that. And my kids are my kids. And I was like, okay, they aren't seeing me as human. They're just seeing me as this one-dimensional mom. And that's fine. That's okay. That's a stage. And so I just thought, I don't have to talk to them about what I'm doing. And so I just don't really. Like I will sometimes if something really exciting happens or something, but even that they just can't share that like level of joy with me because they don't get it. They haven't been through half of what I've been through. And that's great because I made sure they didn't.
And I
So
will tell
it
you,
just is what it is.
they will get to a certain age at some point here, and they will see you differently because my youngest, as soon as he actually moved away for his career, all of a sudden he realized that mom wasn't just mom. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What was mom doing? Wow, if mom could talk to me that way, like she talks to her clients, if mom had the same interest in me, and now we are best buds. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't tell him what to do, but I will listen to him. And my biggest question to everybody is, and how is that working for you? Because if it's
Mm-hmm.
working for you, keep doing it. I don't have to agree with it, but if it's
Right.
working for you, do it. If it's not working for you, step back. Find out one thing that you can change. Don't try to change everything, just change that one thing. And once you do
Mm-hmm.
that, you feel good. Now you're really willing to step back again and say, is there anything else? Because if I do one more thing, maybe that'll even get me closer to where I want to be.
Right.
So, how do clients find you and find your podcast as well, or maybe become a guest on your podcast?
Um, I'm really active on Instagram at melissa.hepner. So I have gotten lots of guests just through threads. Since I've joined Podmatch, I don't like ask on threads anymore, but I'm also kind of committed to if somebody fits, I'll let them on. I'm booked out kind of far, but if you don't care, I don't care. And I mean, not that far actually. I think now I opened up a bunch of slots, so I think I'm actually only booked until September. So I'd have to look, but very active on Instagram, and then my website empoweredwithmelissahepner.org.
Well, we're going to have that all in the show notes, so there's no reason people can't find you. And I want to thank you for being vulnerable. Um, there's this connection, before we started this podcast, we were talking about that Melissa's in Oklahoma, I'm in Ohio. In theory, we're both Midwest, but we're nowhere near each other. And yet, I feel like you could be my sister, my neighbor, because there's so much in common. And I want
Yeah.
people to understand that, your life doesn't have to be terrible to have something in common with somebody who's had some of the issues that Melissa's had. But you know what? Um, we're all human, and
Mm-hmm.
it helps to be honest with ourselves. And when you're honest with yourself, you're not afraid to be honest with people around you. So thank you so much, and enjoy the summer with your sons being home.
Thank you. Thank
You
you
are
so much for
welcome.
having me. I loved it.
Take care now. Bye bye.
Bye.